I think like it's super interesting that like a potential Isaac sequel would have like the same. I don't want to say skepticism, but like Spelunky 1 was like so elegant and like completely designed, like all the stuff was pruned that didn't really have to be in there. That people were really wondering like how a sequel could come together, and then. When marketing and stuff started to come out, people were like, I don't really know what to think of what I'm looking at. But then when they played it, they were like, oh, this is such like it. We're used to sequels that just iterate on what was done in the previous game. This one was more like there was a core thematic element to the game that just got extended in Spelunky 2. So it's interesting to think about what like an Isaac 2 with the same spiritual center could look like without looking just like the same game, but with more items or different colors or whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean, in a lot of ways, I think you could run the comparison of Spelunky 2 and Repentance because it feels a little closer to that. But that said, I was kind of in awe of the simplicity of the sequel of Spelunky because he really was just like remixing the old game and adding another game to it, like a 2-split path situation, and it felt like it didn't miss a beat. Like it just felt like the first game, but it was a whole new first game, which is a weird thing to say because obviously it seems like sequels would feel like that, but they usually don't. They're usually completely different, and they try to reinvent everything, or it's a whole new theme, a whole new story, and whole new XYZ. I mean, my design for Isaac 2 is, obviously a new setting, a new theme, but I don't think you could shy away from the mechanics would be the same, but then again, don't quote me on that.
Yeah, well, I think I learned that like when I was playing Spelunky 2, I was like, I expected it to be Spelunky 1 plus more items, basically, because that's just how contextually and logically fits in my head. And then after playing for, a couple hundred hours, I realized that, like you said, he remixed the first game, but the core of the game is more about like the interactions that can happen between objects in the game that lead you to dying in hilarious ways. So it really, like playing Spelunky 2 so much informed how I felt about the first one. That, moving in the opposite direction for Isaac, like the core of Isaac for me is aggregating items over the course of a run that can cause it to branch, like in a silly way, or like this is going to be almost impossible, or this is going to be like super easy, but it's going to look cool. So it is interesting to think about like how that could look in a similar context, but maybe not, just an exact extension.
Yeah, there are so many weird expectations when it comes to Spelunky. I feel like the only expectation was the game was going to be hard.
Yes.
And that was it, right? But with the Binding of Isaac, I think the major expectation is the horde. Isaac is chaos. Like it is slightly organized chaos. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot behind the scenes. There's a lot of resource management. A lot of weird little mechanics that no one even thinks about while they're playing. But for the most part, it's the horde, and it will be very difficult going in when we have 700 plus items right now at this point.
Yeah.
So it's like you go from that to the original 150 items in the game. It's like there's no way we could release a game with 150 to 200 items in an Isaac game unless they were all completely new. And we are to the point where it is very difficult to come up with new mechanics when it comes to existing mechanics. Like there's only so much you can do. And with Repentance, especially item design, I essentially went through the list and like put things in different categories. And it's like, okay, if there's this many items that give you HP up and there's this many items that do this, how do we balance this out? Like I tallied down the numbers to make sure that we had close to even amounts for damage. Well, I'll say damage. I'll say damage again. Damage, tears up, luck, range, HP, all those things felt more well-rounded. So I had to like pad them out and whatever else. And then you go through the different mechanics of like, what haven't we done with a familiar? Like what existing mechanic exists for a familiar that could be expanded onto a usable item or a passive effect? and then what kind of trinkets could be invented that would complement those archetypes. And I feel like, I mean, I probably could come up with another 100 items, but like it's going to be hard to come up with the new stuff that will wow people in when you set the bar so high when it comes to the amount of content that's existing in the previous game, because people don't see the DLCs, they just see Isaac.
Yeah,
like
true.
I remember when Bumbo came out and they're like, you only have 100 something items, and Isaac has 450. It's like, that's been in development for 7 years. What do you want? Like, I don't the expectations are there, and I think I'm running into that with Mugenics, and I'm fine with it, because Mugenics is another horde type game where it's just like, once all the moving parts are working together well into this finely oiled machine, then we just pad it out, give it a million diseases, a million items, a million different unique mutations, and you just keep it going and going and going, and it gets better with each edition. But not every game I make can like have that many goddamn items.
No, yeah, I can understand. It's hard to move backwards too, right? When people's expectations are like that you're gonna have 500 or 700 items. You know,
Yeah.
like there's always an increasing expectation that you can't go below that from that point on.
That's why you just make my goal after Mugenics is just to do different genres, because no one expects anything. Like with a platformer, no one expects you to make a bazillion items.
That's true.